for each of the panelists to say a word about some don'ts, some mistakes that you've seen, or in terms of approach, or individuals who are looking to educate you on an issue or cultivate a relationship. What are some common mistakes that you've seen, or some things that you'd encourage people to avoid doing? And I'll start with Megan because she's nodding.
Okay. My first comment would be that you need to anticipate that there might be a hard question thrown at you. So you always want to be prepared going into a meeting. Something that's been interesting for us during this legislative session is that our issue is health care reform. And so we've been trying to mobilize our membership to go and meet with their legislators in the district, to go down to Springfield, to call their legislators, and yet many of our members, when they have that interaction, they're told by the legislator that no one's talking about health care reform. So that can be very intimidating to an advocate who thinks, oh, well, I'm part of this big coalition. You know, it seems like it's all over the news. What do you mean people aren't talking about health care? So I'll watch what I say, but legislators can be tricky sometimes. And so you want to make sure that you are prepared. We've been doing a lot of messaging work with, again, some consultants from DC, and they gave us an equation that I think is really helpful. That's Q equals A plus 1. So when you get a question, you want to make sure you have an answer, but you want to make sure you have your plus 1, so that you know that when you're going and giving that response, you can deflect if you don't like the question that is asked of you. You give a quick answer and move over to what your real issue is. So that's a nuanced skill that I would encourage you all to try to practice. I wrote down an example here, and I don't think it's very good, but again, I was saying that healthcare reform costs too much money, and so people might be saying, oh, you know, the state has no money in its budget, so why do you want me to move forward with healthcare reform this year? And my response to that would be, well, you know, we can agree that healthcare is costing more and more money. People are having to spend more money, and so a lot of people are losing their insurance, and so money is definitely a factor. But the real issue is that by not doing anything about the healthcare system, it's actually going to cost us more money in the long run. And I would probably add on to that with some statistics or some more compelling answer, but trying to use those catchphrases like the real issue, really trying to draw your message to, this is what I'm really coming here to talk to you about. So.
Good deal. Ricardo, you've already offered some advice in terms of receiving a 3-page plus letter, but maybe you can offer some additional advice of things you'd encourage people to avoid doing.
What not to do. A couple of things. It's kind of like what turns us off in terms of when a constituent comes in and says, hey, I want to talk to you about this issue or that issue. Don't wag the finger. In other words, don't preach. Don't tell us that, you know, don't come into our office and say, hey, you got to do this. Because my favorite response is, I don't got to do anything. And so it's more of a, Lisa talked about it, you know, attracting with honey, which is just, you know, go in and say, look, this is our story. Okay, and this is, and you know, and with arts advocacy, with healthcare, with education, those are easy sells. But for us in the city council, because we don't deal with the issues that the state has. But the other thing is, it's very intimidating for an elected official when you show up with 10 people to the office and say, we demand a meeting. Because then we immediately get defensive, even though you might be a friendly organization, but when you demand something, when you just do that, at least pre-announce yourself. Say, hey, look, we'd like to come in and chat with you. When are you available? Because when folks do that and they start preaching and they start, you know, wagging the finger, we tend to put up a brick wall. The issue might be great, and it'll take me a while to get around that brick wall, but the fact that there was this kind of confrontational approach, I mean, not just me, but for most elected officials that I know, they put up this wall, and then the wall has to be broken down by the personal approach of somebody that knows that legislator that then says, hey, come on. You know, they meant well. They were at a meeting and they figured you were in the office, so they wanted to walk over and say hello. Well, that's not what they said. They demanded a meeting. So it's the approach, and I think the presentation today was great in terms of how to talk to electeds, how to message it, because you always have to be ready for the tough questions from an elected, and then to have the data and the resources.
I would just say ditto. I think just being able to read something that's outlined, bullet pointed, whatever you do when you come into an office is just be respectful of people's time, just like you would expect someone else to be of yours, because you're staying focused on your issue, you're trying to move it forward, but at the same time you just want to show respect for whoever it is. Doesn't matter if it's an elected official or somebody else that you're working with. And since I've only been in for 2 weeks, I haven't really had too many instances like that, but I have had some people that came running in the door screaming and shouting, and then said, you better get to work on this. And I said, yeah, I've only been in a week, you know, and so it just do what you would think someone would be respectful to you as in the same way.
Good deal. I'd like to ask a question about the influence and role of the media. I have a belief that for our work at the Alliance, it's not just good enough to do good work, but we also have to get credit for our work. And we were pleased to open up the Tribune and see our research from yesterday and the impact of that research referenced in the paper. I'd like for each of you to say a role about the media and how that influences your work. And Megan, I'd love to start with you about the importance of the media in advancing your cause.
Media is very, very important, and something that we have struggled with during this legislative session is, again, going back to messaging and how to make our point of view be heard by the media. Back in, I would say, late March, when there was a lot of publicity about this gross receipts tax, which is a budget proposal that the governor proposed to fund the health care bill, to fund education reform and pension reform. The Chamber of Commerce came out and said they hated this, that this was the largest tax increase ever. They created a website called thelargesttaxincreaseever.com. And this was all over the media. So here we are trying to talk about healthcare stories. You know, we had our arsenal of all of these people that are uninsured, underinsured, have pre-existing conditions, and that's just not going anywhere because only people want to talk about economics and the budget. So we had to do some quick thinking, and we had some allies that had some research. I had alluded to Ken Thorpe earlier before about savings, and so really trying to, the decision we tried is to try to influence sending out press releases, writing letters to the editor talking about the do-nothing tax increase, that if we did nothing, that would actually be costing people more money in the future. And so some reporters have picked up on that, and so that is evidence of the issue being potent enough that people really want to see health care reform, and people are talking about it, regardless if it is negative publicity that's out there sometimes. Health care is still in the news, and that's exciting. But I guess I would just go back to say that from a grassroots perspective, trying to, you know, write a letter to the editor and read letters to the editor in your local paper is hugely impacting. And that's a strategy that we're going to continue to employ as we go through week by week by week and trying to see what the state legislature is going to do about health care, is trying